Welcome to Life Stories. She didn't cry when her bonus disappeared. She didn't cry when her 6-month project was handed to a junior developer half her age. But she did cry, alone, late at night, when she heard her mother's voice in a voicemail she missed because she was coding through her birthday. That was the moment Emily Carter realized she had become invisible in the very system she helped build. For 8 years, she was the mind behind the product, never the face. Until one day, everything she created was stolen: her code, her name, her future. But what her CEO didn't know was this: she never signed the IP transfer, and what they built on top of her silence was about to collapse. Stay with us to find out how one woman turned betrayal into a blueprint for power. Don't forget to subscribe to start today's story. Emily Carter didn't cry when Brandon Steele, the CEO she'd loyally served for nearly a decade, handed her project to someone else without a word. She didn't cry when the bonus she was promised vanished into silence. But she did cry, alone in the dark, when she heard her mother's voice in a missed voicemail. A message left on her birthday. The birthday Emily had missed because she was at the office, coding through the night, building a platform that would make someone else rich. That was the moment she realized something devastating. She had become invisible in the very empire she helped build. Emily was 37, the lead product strategist at a rising health tech firm in Boston. Not the name on headlines, not the keynote speaker at tech summits, but the woman behind every system that actually worked. She didn't care about politics. She never played the game. What she valued was building something real, something that scaled, solved problems, changed lives. So when Brandon called her into his office 6 months ago with a hush-hush opportunity, she believed him. He spoke with that polished charm, the kind of charisma you could tell he'd practiced in front of a mirror. "Emily," he said, leaning in like he was sharing state secrets, "I need someone I trust. This deal could be a game changer. A multi-million-dollar contract with a national healthcare network, but it has to be built quietly, internally. No press, no noise, just brains." She was the architect, the engineer, the entire technical spine of the operation. No announcement, no team, just her. And if you pull it off, Brandon added with a knowing smile, performance bonus, equity, maybe the last job you'll ever need to take. She didn't ask for a contract. After 8 years of loyalty, trust blurs into something that feels like faith. And she wanted, desperately, for someone to finally see her worth. So she went to work. For 6 months, Emily built a revolutionary platform from the ground up. A secure patient data system spanning 5 states. Back-end infrastructure redesigned line by line. She skipped vacations, missed her daughter's dance recitals, worked through holidays. She gave the project her mind, her body, her time, and moments with her child she would never get back. One night at 2:47 a.m., she saw a missed FaceTime. "Hi, Mommy," her daughter's voice chimed. "Are you coming to my recital tomorrow? I saved the middle seat for you so you can see me spin." Emily stared at the message until her vision blurred, then set an alarm for 6 a.m. "After this project," she whispered to herself, "everything will change." But it didn't. 3 weeks after the platform launched and the $3 million contract was signed, Brandon stopped responding to her emails. The bonus never came. The equity never existed. At the company's investor showcase, a junior developer named Ryan Mitchell stood on stage, introduced by Brandon as the visionary architect of their groundbreaking healthcare platform. Emily watched from the back of the room as Ryan clicked through slides built on her work, using her diagrams, her phrases, even her color scheme. Her name was never mentioned. Something inside her cracked, not from anger, not yet, but from the quiet ache of being erased. Emily hadn't just built a platform. She'd traded pieces of her life to make it real, and the man she trusted hadn't even said thank you. Or maybe he had. Maybe forgetting her was the thank you. Still, she showed up the next Monday like nothing had happened, led meetings, gave feedback, maintained the illusion. But by Friday, she was removed from the client email chains. Her team now reported to someone else. Her access to the codebase she had written revoked. They said it was due to restructuring. At the next company update, she watched Ryan step into her place. Literally. Her desk was cleared. His name was on the office door beside Brandon's. And when he passed her in the hallway, coffee in hand, he smiled and said, "Hey, Emily, hope you're okay with me taking over some of your docs." Brandon said you'd be stepping back. Stepping back? She hadn't been told anything. No conversation. No memo. Not even a Slack message. She was just replaced. That afternoon, she opened an old photo album, her daughter's first year of preschool. Back when she still worked part-time. Back when she made it to every birthday, every recital. She stared at those tiny shoes, finger paint-covered hands, that bright, toothy smile. "What happened to me?" she whispered. She had traded being there for the illusion of being valued. Now she had neither. The final blow came a week later at a company-wide meeting. Brandon played a slick video celebrating their tech breakthrough. Screens flashed, data danced, clients smiled. And Ryan, in every frame, gestured and explained the system she had built, using her words, her exact movements. Applause erupted. Emily slipped out before it ended, drove for hours in silence, not crying, not screaming, just breathing. She ended up in front of her late mother's old house, the one she hadn't visited in years. The windows were dark, but her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "If they take your work, they take nothing. If they take your belief in yourself, they take everything." That was the moment it all snapped into focus. Brandon hadn't just stolen her work. He had stolen the reflection of who she was. And she had let him. But not anymore. Have you ever given your heart to something, only to watch someone else claim it as their own? Have you ever stayed silent when you should have stood up? If you felt that, don't miss what happens next, because Emily Carter is done being invisible. In the next part of her story, she finds something they forgot to take: her power. Emily didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table, the only light coming from the screen of her laptop. Outside, Boston was quiet, the kind of silence that feels like the world is holding its breath. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, not out of hesitation, but because something in her had awakened. She typed one word into her search bar: ownership. Then another: intellectual property. And that's when she found it. A legal note she'd bookmarked months ago, back when the project first started. She hadn't read it carefully then. But now the words hit like a drumbeat. In the absence of a signed IP transfer agreement, the intellectual property remains the property of the original creator. Her breath caught. Her hands started to tremble. She opened the company's shared drive, searched for the document Brandon had mentioned early on. Just a formality, he'd said. There it was. IP transfer EC draft.pdf. Still labeled draft. Still unsigned. She sat back in her chair, stunned. After everything, after the betrayal, the erasure, the silence, they had forgotten the one thing that actually mattered. They had never secured legal ownership of the very thing they were now selling. Her thing. And for the first time in months, Emily didn't feel powerless. She felt dangerous. The next morning, she sent a message to someone she hadn't spoken to in over a year: Alexis Monroe, a tech attorney she'd met at a Women in Leadership Summit. They'd bonded over whiskey and war stories. Emily remembered she'd once said, "If you ever get screwed over, I'm your first call." So Emily called. And when Alexis heard the story, she didn't hesitate. "They're using your software without a signed IP agreement," she said, voice sharp. "That's not just unethical. That's a lawsuit waiting to happen." Emily wasn't thinking about lawsuits. Not yet. She just wanted the truth to matter. She spent the next 3 nights gathering everything. Code commits tied to her Git account, architecture sketches with her initials, time-stamped Slack messages, Zoom recordings where Brandon literally said, "Emily, your system is genius. You're the only one I trust to lead this." She built a folder, labeled it Proof of Authorship, Final. When Alexis reviewed it, she didn't even blink. "This is airtight," she said. "Honestly, I've seen billion-dollar firms lose court battles with less." But they didn't send a lawsuit. They sent a cease and desist. A quiet bomb wrapped in legal precision, hand-delivered to the firm's legal team. It stated clearly that Emily Carter retained all rights to the platform's architecture and back-end system, that no transfer of IP had ever been executed, that any continued use of the platform without her written consent would be a direct violation of federal intellectual property law. They gave them 7 business days to respond. The email arrived on day 4. Not from Brandon, from the firm's general counsel. Cold, clinical, dismissive. They claimed Emily had acted within the scope of her employment and therefore had no legal grounds for ownership. But they never attached a signed agreement, because there wasn't one. They're bluffing, Alexis said. They're trying to intimidate you, but they know the law's not on their side. That's why they didn't threaten to sue. They're hoping you'll back down. Emily didn't. Instead, she did something none of them expected. She called Mr. Thompson, the CTO of the healthcare firm that had signed the $3 million deal, the man Brandon had been bragging about for months. They met for coffee in Cambridge. 2 hours. No small talk. She showed him the folder, her documentation, her code. He went pale. "You built all of this?" he asked, voice low. "Yes," Emily said, "and they're licensing it without any legal right to do so." He sat back, rubbed his jaw. "We don't want to be caught in the middle of a lawsuit." "You won't be," she said calmly. "But if you'd prefer to deal with the actual creator, I'm listening." There was a pause. Then he said something that changed everything. "If you had your own company, we'd rather work with you." Emily blinked. "You'd switch?" He nodded. "We'd prefer it." That night, Emily Carter became more than the architect. She became the founder. She filed the paperwork to create her own firm, Horizon Frameworks, a name rooted in her original design system, a name that meant looking ahead. And while Brandon Steele was still sitting in his corner office, planning his next round of self-congratulatory investor pitches, Emily was building something else entirely, her future. Have you ever had someone try to erase your voice, and what would you do to get it back? Stay tuned. In the next chapter, Emily doesn't just reclaim what's hers, she rewrites the rules entirely. 3 weeks after Emily Carter founded Horizon Frameworks, the unexpected happened. An official request for proposal arrived in her inbox, not addressed to the company that had erased her, addressed to her, to Horizon Frameworks. The healthcare network had made its decision. Quietly, decisively, they were cutting ties with Brandon Steele's firm, and they were ready to sign a new contract with the woman who had actually built the system. Emily didn't rush it. She and Alexis worked through the nights, drafting a bulletproof proposal. Every clause, every term, every word, ironclad. The scope was clear, the pricing fair, the ownership airtight. No more ambiguity, no more assumptions. When they sent it off, Emily prepared herself for delays, for questions, for resistance. What she got instead was a signed contract in 4 days. 4. The new deal was worth more than the original. It included a retainer for ongoing support and exclusive rights to all future platform upgrades. And more importantly, it came with respect. They knew who had built the system. They weren't just investing in code, they were investing in her. The news hit Brandon's firm like a lightning bolt through a server room. Emily found out the same day he did. Apparently, the client's team had informed his office of the immediate contract termination, citing unresolved compliance issues. The same contract they'd announced to investors. The same one they'd celebrated in press releases. The one they built their entire Q4 around. It collapsed overnight. Emily didn't gloat, but she didn't flinch either. 2 mornings later, she received a call from someone she hadn't spoken to in months. "Emily, what did you do?" It was Melissa Green, a former project manager who had always treated her with quiet kindness. There was panic in her voice. Awe, too. Emily paused, then answered simply, "I took back what was mine." Melissa laughed, a stunned breath between fear and admiration. Brandon stormed out of the board meeting. "Investors are threatening to pull out. Legal's scrambling. You flipped everything." Emily didn't say anything. But inside, something finally settled. Not triumph, not revenge, just alignment. 2 days later, the company sent out an internal memo, cold and vague. "Due to shifting client relationships and internal restructuring, we are undergoing leadership transitions, effective immediately." Translation: Brandon Steele was out. No speech, no farewell, no framed photo on the wall, Just an empty office, cleared out before noon. His nameplate, gone. His legacy, dismantled by one lie. And one woman he thought he could silence. 1 week later, Emily walked back into that building. Not as an employee, not as someone hoping to be seen. She walked in as the CEO of the partner company. The entire lobby stilled. Eyes tracked her from every direction, some in shock, some in shame, some in something closer to awe. Even Ryan Mitchell, the rising star, froze as she passed. She didn't stop. She didn't look back. The meeting was scheduled in the top floor conference room. Glass walls, long table, new executives, legal counsel, board members. And Emily. She presented her transition plan with clarity, confidence, and zero bitterness. She answered questions before they were asked, her voice calm, her presence undeniable. At the end of the meeting, one of the senior advisors leaned in and said quietly, "We should have been working with you from the beginning." Emily smiled. "You still can." Because she wasn't there to tear it all down. She was there to replace it. That's what real power looks like. Not revenge. Legacy. After the meeting, she didn't celebrate. There were no fireworks, no champagne, just the quiet kind of peace that comes after a storm. She went home, tucked her daughter into bed, and as she kissed her forehead, the little girl whispered, "You smile more now, Mommy." Emily felt it too. She wasn't exhausted anymore. She was free. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would never shrink herself again to fit into rooms too small for her fire. A month later, driving past the old office building, she looked up at the glass windows that once made her feel invisible. But not anymore. She didn't need permission. She didn't need applause. She had her own company, her own team, her own voice. And this time, no one could take it from her. How did you feel watching Emily's journey unfold? If her story struck a chord in you, drop 100 in the comments and tell us, where are you watching from? Your voice might just be the one someone else needs to find their own. Don't forget to like, share, and follow for more stories that remind us, when you stop asking to be seen, you start becoming unforgettable.